Hi, everyone. First, I wanted to say I am receiving so much positive feedback that my heart is exploding with gratitude. Thank you so much for the messages, support, and for sharing the podcast and my Facebook posts. I really, really appreciate it. I'm going to start tonight's episode with a quote. And I have to stop making that noise. I don't know if anybody else has noticed it, but I have listened to the other podcast episodes and it's very annoying. So I'm going to try my best to stop making that noise. The quote says, "Trauma permanently changes us. This is the big, scary truth about trauma. There is no such thing as getting over it. The 5 stages of grief model marks universal stages in learning to accept loss, but the reality is, in fact, much bigger. A major life disruption leaves a new normal in its wake. There is no back to the old me. You are different now, full stop. This is not a wholly negative thing. Healing from trauma can also mean finding new strength and joy. The goal of healing is not a papering over of changes in an effort to preserve or present things as normal. It is to acknowledge and wear your new life, warts, wisdom, and all, with courage." I love the part of this quote that says, "This is not a wholly negative thing. Trauma sucks, plain and simple. Trauma is a negative thing, and our emotions after experiencing trauma are definitely not positive ones. It's normal to think to ourselves, why the hell did this have to happen to me? Life throws experiences at us that we could have never imagined, and many we wouldn't ever want to. But we can't control many of the things that happen to us. Traumatic events happen, and we are left to deal with the aftermath, which are our emotions. As I mentioned about grieving after a loss, it is important and necessary to process traumatic experiences and go through every emotion we need to feel: sadness, guilt, depression, anger, resentment, hopelessness. The challenging part comes after that phase. Do we remain afraid and angry, or do we muster up every ounce of strength in our being and use it to continue living and doing things that make us happy? Not letting the trauma rob us of all of the beautiful things life still has to offer. Holding on to the negative feelings can actually make us feel safe in a sense. If we choose to let those feelings go and we put ourselves out there again with our guard down, we become vulnerable to being hurt again, to possibly experiencing more trauma. I used to think to myself, if I keep my guard up all the time and not let myself feel too happy about anything, then if something bad happens, it won't be that much of a shock. Almost like I was living in a neutral emotional state. We can learn to live happy lives despite the fact that we've been traumatized, and we may very well be again. After some of the traumatic experiences I've had, I remember being angry because I thought, I don't want this to change who I am. Like the quote says, trauma does change us. There's no back to the old me. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing. All of our experiences, both positive and negative, shape who we are. We are constantly evolving and changing. Change is the only constant in life. I'm not saying trauma is good. What I am saying is that shit happens, and we can make a conscious decision to not let it define us or lose our sense of self because of it. Just like the grief of losing a loved one will always be there, so will the complicated emotions from trauma. We learn to live through it. Despite the loss and trauma, we still have a purpose and a life to live. I've had several people in my life suffer from alcohol and drug addiction, and they've attributed it to a traumatic event. Although there are so many factors that come into play with addiction, unresolved trauma can cause people to turn to drugs and alcohol as coping mechanisms. Some of the most common types of traumas associated with addiction are sexual assault, rape, childhood abuse, grief, witnessing or being a victim of a crime, and natural disasters. I will discuss many of these topics in later episodes. I am not saying pushing through trauma is an easy task. It's not like you wake up one morning and say, I'm just not going to let that bother me anymore. It takes time, strength, counseling, and sometimes medication, but it is possible. The first step is wanting to let go and wanting to move forward. This can be a very difficult task, but very empowering at the same time. Another important step in healing from any trauma is not suppressing your feelings. If you try to push them down and ignore them, they can and will manifest in the form of physical or mental illnesses at some point. They definitely do not disappear on their own. The feelings need to be addressed. Many times after a traumatic event, a person tries to control every aspect of their lives as much as possible because the trauma itself can make them feel like they've completely lost control of their life. This happened to my 9-year-old daughter when Mark passed away. Valentina was the sassiest, girliest girl I had ever seen. She usually wore pink, put on makeup, was usually covered in sparkles and wearing jewelry. Her favorite place to go was Sweet and Sassy because she loved having her nails and her hair done. After Mark passed away, that all changed. She immediately wanted to cut her hair very short. At the time, it was down to her butt. She wanted to wear her brother's old clothes, and she wanted to be seen as a boy. I know this happens, but the fact that it happened as soon as she lost her dad, I knew it was a trauma response, and her therapist agreed with me. It was her way of controlling her life because everything felt so out of control. At 7 years old, she lost her dad. I can't even imagine what she was feeling because I lost my dad when I was 25, and that was extremely difficult to deal with. I let her do her thing. She had short hair and a completely different wardrobe. None of that bothered me. I was upset because she looked miserable. If being perceived as a boy made her happy, it would have been a different story. She never smiled in pictures, and she just wasn't herself. Last November, she became friends with a girl who lost her mom a few months after Mark passed away. I immediately saw a change in her mood. She was happier and much more carefree. She saw that her friend was still herself after losing her mom. She didn't change her identity. One day, Valentina asked me to bring her to the mall to buy new clothes. She picked out things that she normally would have before Mark passed away, and she was thrilled. I was happy to see her so happy. She even started smiling again. She let go of the control, and it was a relief for her. She didn't have to pretend she was someone she wasn't anymore. Now she plays soccer, does modern, hip-hop, ballroom, and Latin dancing. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, my oncologist asked me what my concerns were. I told him I was scared that the surgeries, radiation, and medication would make me a different person. He asked me an unexpected question. He looked at me and said, "Are you the same person you were before Mark passed away?" And I said, "No." He said, "We are always becoming different versions of ourselves because our experiences shape us." Which goes back to what I said earlier about the change from trauma. It does not have to always be negative. I feel so strong and resilient after going through breast cancer treatment. Everything I've been through has prepared me for the next challenge, and I've never felt stronger in my entire life. I'm going to read another quote. We don't get over or move on from our trauma. We are forced to make space for it. We carry it, we learn to live with it, and sometimes we thrive in spite of it. I love replacing the word survive with thrive and the word victim with warrior. It takes time, soul searching, and every ounce of courage and strength we have, but it's worth it. If you have any questions, comments, or just want to reach out, you can email me at valariedancingintherain@gmail.com. And my name is spelled VALARIE, dancingintherain@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for your support.
What's that?
I just need Benadryl. That would be interesting, me on Benadryl doing a podcast. Be like, hey everybody, I'm on Benadryl. Okay, ready?
I've been recording.
No, you didn't.
Swear to God. Go ahead.
No, you didn't. Shut up. Kind of like Arlene, like she's just raw and like just funny and just like doesn't give a shit, and I love her. And so we're sitting there. It was I was in the middle, she was on this side, and one of the other moms was on the other side. And the other mom's kind of like quiet, but she just laughs at everything we say because we're just weird. And she brought something up about trauma, and I go, oh my God, I'm talking about that tonight in tonight's episode. And she goes, oh my God. She goes, I totally forgot you started a podcast. She goes, you're fucking nuts. She goes, who the hell goes, oh, I just had my fucking ovaries removed in cancer treatment. And she goes, I forget the way she put it, but it was just like, she just went on this rant and I was dying laughing. She goes, is there anything you can't do? Do you ever stop? She's like, what the fuck? I don't understand. She's like, you're just like, you do all this shit. And she's like, you just had surgery. I was like, but the way she said it was just so fucking funny.